Hey there! So, with the very recent release of Deltarune Chapter 5, I want to go over the plot of the chapter and really summarize to get a stable ground of where to theorize and analyze going forward. In this video, I just want to say I will be focusing on the plot of the chapter, and we'll probably skip over some, if not a lot, depending on how you view character interactions within the chapter, as that is not what I am focused on in this video. So to all those people that really wanted an in-depth look at Jockington's beard growth, I'm so sorry. Maybe in the next one. I will might make it an individual character analysis if you guys want me to, but I have a lot of things to talk about and a lot of videos I want to make, so we'll see. Also, one last thing before we start, heavy spoilers obviously. I highly recommend you play every chapter of Deltarune up to this point, and Undertale before you watch this, to not get spoiled. But if you already know what happens, or really just don't care, then let's jump into it. So let us set the scene. The chapter begins how most of them do. We start in Chris's bedroom, and Asriel's shared bedroom. However, notably, Chris isn't present at the very beginning. Of course, soon, Chris enters the scene very dramatically through the window, and crawls across the room, putting us back in their body, taking us out of the cage. However, notably, before we do, Chris looks very exhausted and is visibly paler or greener than usual, which is very odd. I think this really notably proves that Chris really can't function for a long period of time without the soul, because it was rather vague in chapter 4 if they could or couldn't, because in the holiday house they seemed rather fine and act normal without the soul in them, but it seems for long hours, I guess eventually they have to get the soul back in them. So with us getting control back over Chris's body, there are actually a few things of note in the house that I find very interesting. First off, a really important thing to start off with, directly in the bedroom, is interacting with Asriel's drawer, as we find a love letter, and if we decide to make that our very first priority, we will see that Asriel has at least had a crush on Des. If not, maybe they had a relationship. We don't know fully the extent of their relationship. It could have just been a crush, it could have been an actual thing. But this does give us more characterization on Asriel and how Des' disappearance, or whatever happened to her, had an effect on him, and why he doesn't even live in Hometown at this point. Moving on, even in the normal route, Chris seemingly doesn't like looking at pictures of just them and Noelle, as they quickly shut the photo album after we look at it, which is interesting. It seems that this relationship with Noelle is very hard on Chris in some way. Another thing in this top floor that a lot of people did notice is the How to Draw Dragons book with the purple dragon on the front cover. This is really important because the dialogue here really goes in depth on how we ponder why it didn't become a Darkner, which could reveal if Chris has romantic feelings towards Susie, or how they feel about Susie, because they really ponder and think about it. I don't know if this is also just meant to be a joke, because before chapter 3 a lot of people thought that this could have become a Darkner in the Dark World as well, but it didn't, so I don't know if this is just supposed to be a meta gag or not, but it's hard to say because there's a lot of hints at Chris's romantic feelings just in general in the chapter, and Chris flirting and stuff, where it's hard to tell what the game is getting at. For me at least, I can't really say definitely here, in this chapter, what's going on with Chris romance wise. I'm also not the arbiter to talk about that really. However, on the top floor of the house, what I find most interesting is the dialogue when interacting with the mirror, which mirrors of course in Undertale also have notably very good dialogue, but specifically here it mentions how you don't recognize yourself in it. This is very interesting to me, because the narration basically at this point isn't even gonna humor that you and Chris are the same person, directly pointing out that you don't recognize yourself. Something that I find tough about this narration to decipher is this through your lens, or is this through Chris's lens? I am leaning here towards Chris's lens because it mentions you through Chris's actions earlier, so I'm gonna presume that it's Chris doesn't recognize themselves with us in their body, and I'm just guessing here. But who's to say? It's up for your interpretation for now. After you're done interacting with everything in the house, we can move on to giving Toriel toast, and she kind of apologizes, and then we go outside. now we can see that the town is getting prepared for the festival, with us being able to interact with very few people. One of them being Asgore, who we see setting up, who is still very slightly delusional as always, and we make our way towards the school. Once in the school, we go where obviously you thought, into Castletown, and we get to see what's become after Chapter 4. There are some new things in Castletown, new NPCs, your recruits, just stuff like that from the previous chapter. We can talk to Sham, who reminds us that this chapter will have our last Shadow Crystal holder, and reveals to us that the Shadow Crystals are the failed dreams of Lightners, which was, I think, the fan interpretation, and the main interpretation a lot of people had, and it's cool to be seen proven here, and just canonized. However, what we are really here to do in Castletown is to get Susie ready for her date with Noelle at the festival. And once you're done making her outfit, it's time for what a lot of people had been waiting for. It's time for the festival in Hometown, which has been hyped up since the very, very beginning of Deltarune, and it's been talked about since the start. Now, the festival is really fun, and you just mainly going around seeing character interactions. I am really going to skip over it here. It is a lot of character just stuff, and you get to see like cute Susie and Noelle date moments, and you get to see like Pizza Pants' story wrap up, like the Pizzarina plotline. I know you guys were really begging to see that conclusion. But we end off the festival by going to the beach where Susie and Noelle interact more a bit. They mingle, I know. And things are going well until Noelle gets a call that Rudy has fallen down. Now, it is very hard to say what they mean by fallen down, as obviously, in the Undertale sense, fallen down literally means like they are dying, like this person is dying. Or Rudy could have just fallen down like physically off because he was on a ladder we saw earlier in the festival, so we don't exactly know what fallen down means in this context. So Noelle leaves, and we are just left with Susie and Chris, who are going to go catch up to Noelle. However, these plans get stopped short because somebody had decided it was a good time to make a dark fountain in the flower shop. I wonder who that was. What really surprised me though was that it really wasn't created by Asgore. I mean, it's not hidden, like who created the dark fountain. It wasn't created by Asgore, and we know that right away. It was instead created by Chris, which was just shocking to me. I really thought Asgore was going to be the creator of it. And in general, I was actually really surprised about Asgore's character. It was very different from what I expected it to be. And yes, my predictions of the narrative of Chapter 5 were very, 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 very wrong, okay? Don't worry, I know. You don't need to remind me in case you were typing that for some reason. Please don't be mean to me. So it's time for the main adventure. We enter the Dark World, with us landing in a very secluded location at first, where we soon run into none other than Asgore interacting with someone that we can't see, when suddenly we find out who it is. And now I know who I am not going to be able to escape until Deltarune Chapter 6. Last time it was Tenna after Chapters 3 and 4. Couldn't get him off of anywhere. He was everywhere. He was everywhere. But now, I mean, I'm gonna see this guy a lot more in the future. This is Flowery. Not Flowey, but Flowery. There's an R in there this time. And he is what the golden flower in Asgore's shop became in the Dark World, taking on the form of a human. This is important. Flowery is the main antagonist in this Dark World, who plays a role I would compare most similarly to Queen in Chapter 2, who you will see throughout the chapter and will inevitably fight at the end, but you will see a lot of them throughout the chapter. It is very clear at the start, like you can tell from the very beginning, that Ralsei does not like Flowery. In fact, he fucking hates this guy with his wholehearted soul. My guy is a hater this chapter. But we get the reason for that later on in this chapter. After the beginning sequence that seems mandatory for each Dark World, we have our first area of the Dark World, being the Garden, as it's called, which should give you very, very heavy deja vu to Chapter 1 of Deltarune. In fact, this whole chapter, at least the start of it, has very heavy ties to Chapter 1, such as Ralsei wearing his hat again at the beginning in some of the chapter. The very similar look in general that this area has to Chapter 1, like Field of Hopes and Dreams, and even having a chef that gives you a really good healing item. Just so many things that are just like Deltarune Chapter 1 again. I'm going to make a video in the future analyzing why this could be the case, so you know what to do if you want to know when that comes out. Hint, it starts with an S and ends with an E. But the garden is built to be the start of the chapter, and you make your way through it eventually. Throughout it, you will get your first look at some of the soul flowers as humans, like as human darkner kind of deal. They're not darkners-ish. I'll talk about it more later. And we get to see their characters. And don't be like me in this part of the chapter, where you were so desperate looking for the egg that you check like half the loading zones for the egg. I thought the egg was in so many different rooms this chapter, but it's not even in the garden area. It's further on in the chapter. I will let you know what it is. It's not in this area. I was going insane this chapter. Okay, I was so desperate looking for the egg. And guess what? I didn't even find it. I had to go back and get it. I'll tell you where it is later. Don't worry. Don't go through the suffering I did it. You probably already got it, by the way, if you're watching this. So we've progressed through the garden. I know, I really skipped over it. I mean, what I won't skip over, I gotta mention this. Flowery shows us his 6 skateboarding moves. They were really awesome. But we've reached the end of the garden, or near the end of the garden, where we find out that Flowery has been helping us out because he just wants us to take a regular portal out of the Dark World and just leave. He tells us that we are only getting into danger, and that Asgore really doesn't need us and just needs a human. The human in this case being him. This is our first start in the chapter where it becomes clear kind of why Ralsei doesn't like Flowery, because Flowery and Ralsei are kind of two sides of the same coin. And like, it's hard. I'll talk about this more later, but they are very much two sides of the same coin, and they're very antagonistic towards each other because Ralsei hates how similar he is to Flowery in a way. So, at the actual end of the garden area, we get our first fight with one of the soul flowers, facing off against the cyan flower, which turns out this whole time, I guess, was supposed to be the color aqua. So, I will now refer to the soul as aqua from now on when talking about the soul or the flower or the character, because turns out it was aqua the whole time. I always thought it was cyan. I'm so sorry. Aqua is a really fun mini-boss. I think it has great patterns, and is actually where the trailer shot bullet pattern of the Aqua Soul's Omega Flowery attack comes from. I think most of us assumed this was the most likely answer. Even I thought this was the most likely answer, even with my stupid clone prediction or whatever. But I was just mainly saying that for fun, and I think a lot of people were saying, like, it could be the Vessel's attack or Chris is attacking us. I think that was mainly for fun. I think most of us expected this was the most likely outcome, just because the Soul Flower was there, right? But after defeating Aqua, as a prize, we get the main gameplay feature of this chapter, being the Petal Feather. This feature turns Deltarune into a 2D platform, and it is exquisite. Chef's kiss. It is a beautiful, beautiful feature. It's something that I didn't think anyone expected, didn't know we needed, but oh wow, it is great. It's great. I'm so glad it was included. The Deltarune team did a really good job with it. It's very, very fun to play in, and especially to do combat in. I surprisingly really love the combat, just like doing the bullet patterns and fighting them. It was really fun. I actually wanted more fights with the bullet patterns in this chapter, and I can't wait to see more of it in the future, because I assume it will return, because climbing will returns in this chapter, so I assume this gimmick will also return in the future, and I am excited to see what we have in store for this, because this can get really cool. So, with this new mechanic, we can now officially progress into the next area of the chapter, being the cliffs, which is a very pretty area, very nice to look at. In general, this whole chapter actually of Deltarune is very gorgeous and looks very good. It has my stamp of approval. They are constantly improving on the visuals since chapter 1. It's very nice to see. They just look really good now. The sprites look really amazing now. The start of the cliffs is when Asgore first realizes Chris is here in the Dark World. But before they can really interact, Flowery just sends him away to the castle, as he is trying to just distract Asgore this whole time. This part of the chapter is heavily focused on utilizing your newly acquired feather, by the way. Most of the gameplay is this, and it's really fun to do. We get to see some more of the flowers in this part of the chapter, such as Seth, who is the purple flower. This is the only flower with a name, just an FYI. The others are just colors, like yellow, orange, but the purple one is Seth, just so you know. You will also find a very, very interesting shop in this part of the chapter that definitely has nothing to do with the secret boss or anything. In all actuality, this shopkeeper sells a mysterious key, which will be used later to unlock the secret boss. Sorry, spoilers for later in the video. I haven't mentioned it yet, but there have been pink coins in optional areas, like side areas, up to this point, and the key here costs 10 pink coins. In total, there are 19 pink coins, so you can pretty easily get the key. And even though you don't need all 19 for the secret boss, I heavily recommend you pick up all 19 as the other 9 are useful, but more on that later. I will tell you that once we get there. Quite literally, we are just getting to the secret stuff at this point. Quite literally, the room after this shop is where the location of the egg is in this chapter. So, near the end of this room, there is a running segment where you can cut wheat, or in better terms, harvest the wheat, which, if you don't know, is a clue for chapter 3 for where the egg will be in this chapter. So what you need to do is cut all the wheat, and then each time you run back, there will be one remaining piece of wheat. You have to keep cutting this piece of wheat around 5 or 6 times until a balloon flies out of it, and then you must follow it off to the left side of the screen where you will enter a room with the annoying dog floating on a balloon. Just copy the flowers he goes to, he'll go in a pattern, and then you can enter the egg room where it is revealed that this will be the final egg of the game, and we shouldn't look for more. This is very interesting to me, as this is the last chapter with shadow crystals and the last chapter with an egg. If you remember from chapter 4, Gerson during his fight talks about the chapters past the 5th not being written yet, which is very interesting going forth, because, small spoiler, but we are not probably going to the shelter actually next chapter. I thought from here we'd go to the shelter and like chapter 6 and 7 were both in the shelter, and I think a lot of people actually had this interpretation, but it doesn't seem like that. You will see later by the end of this chapter it really doesn't seem that way. It seems to me that they really won't be connected via the same dark world. However, one more thing about the egg room is that this one is not as interesting as the other chapters where it reveals something about Chris or the game, which feels weird to me. I'm also going to make a video on this in the future, but I don't know how to take the egg rooms, as some of them, like this one and chapter 2, are not serious. They seem kind of jokey and just haha funny, but chapter 4's one is plot relevant. It feels like it talks about Chris going to therapy, it seems very serious. So I don't know what vibe to get from the egg rooms at this point. I'm just genuinely confused, and I don't know if I'll get an answer. After the cliffs, we have finally made it to the castle, which is such a big area, it is split into 2 parts within the teleporter doors. But I am getting ahead of myself, as this part of the chapter starts off with Asgore physically pushing Susie and Chris out of the dark world, saying that we shouldn't return and closing the door. Obviously, we don't listen and head back in via the back door, but before we do, Susie has a thought for a moment and realizes that Chris was back here earlier and maybe should have seen someone open the dark fountain. Of course, she doesn't press on this issue, but I do feel like this is the start of Susie starting to maybe realize that Chris might not be completely on the same side of her and start to think about things deeper, you know. But we go through the back door and get trapped in jail. Great. However, we quickly get released by Aqua and Seth, who actually, Seth had made a deal with Chris when the Dark World was created. I find this very interesting, because how would Chris know that they would need a favor from Seth specifically before the chapter? Seth is just one of the soul flowers. Why Seth specifically to open the jail for them? This is the only time that Chris needs Seth's help. I don't know if Chris knows some of the prophecy, maybe? That's what I'm maybe thinking even, and knows what's gonna happen. I just don't know. But in return for this, Chris gives Seth the most valuable possession you've had up to this point, being a feather from a true genius. Birdly, his blue feather shining in the darkness. But after being released, we meet up with Ralsei, who does not like being a butler this time, and we continue towards the main castle. So we end up in the main foyer, with us having 2 options on which path to go. The classic conundrum. Left or right. And it doesn't matter what you start with. I'm going to summarize these as quickly as possible, at least the main plot of them, because I'm focused on the main plot in this video. A lot of these are just character-based interactions within these. They're just like you get to see the characters' fun interactions. And don't get me wrong, I love the characters and stuff, but I'm really focused on the main plot here in this one. So I'm going to start with the left side, because that is where I started, and you have to follow my pathing. Now, this area of the chapter is focused on the yellow and blue flower. Each side is focused on 2 flowers, and then Aqua and Seth are just also there on both sides, because they're kind of like the main 2 flowers you see besides flowery throughout the chapter. But before we get to the flowers on either side, or any side at all, I want to go over both sides of Asgore's plot, because you get to see a short clip of him on each side, of him being very absorbed in his research and trying to get as much proof as he can on the Dark World so he can get his life back together and prove that he was right the whole time. So we get some very, very important details from some documents that fall on the ground after each of these cutscenes that mention how Asgore stumbled across a dark fountain a long, long time ago. And we also get more documents on the other side, of course, saying how Asgore also stumbled across the remnants of the computer lab, and the old fountain had black shards. Both of these ones, the long time ago one and the computer lab, as recent as chapter 2, that it is literally the chapter 2 one, they both had black shards at their location. So I don't know how Asgore actually came across the computer lab one, but that's interesting. I don't know if like Carol came across it and gave it to him, but I'm getting sidetracked at this point. It's very interesting that if you interact with these documents again, Ralsei mentions how he should have known about this, since it's important, which tells me that he doesn't just have the knowledge of all the important information. Someone specifically told him this, and told him the information of the prophecy and everything, and this was specifically left out, which is confusing to him, because this seems important. So, I don't know who this could be giving him this information. Could be Gaster, could be Friend. Who knows at this point? There's so many options, right? And so many, like, characters that we can theorize about. However, we will learn more about what happened with Asgore at the end of the chapter, so you'll need to stay tuned. So let's move on to Yellow and Blue. So the left side has us making think that Yellow committed some sort of crime, because we trick him into thinking that he was the one who destroyed the blue flowers. In reality, we were the ones who destroyed the flowers. Most of this side is just trying us to get, like, it's just funny, like, character interactions, obviously. Trying to get Yellow not to hurt himself as he tries to, like, blow himself up and bury himself alive. I know it doesn't sound funny, but it's played for humor in the chapter. Okay, just trust me. And he's trying to give himself, like, a just punishment because he committed a crime and he's the justice soul, right? However, Blue eventually makes Yellow realize that he wasn't a bad person, and then we have a really fun battle where you have to, like, do like a mini trial and solve the answer to 4 crimes. So the other side, the right side of the foyer, is focused on green and orange, though it is mostly about orange, as green's kind of just there. Orange thinks that they're also in the form of a human when they really are the only one that is a mouse, but they're very sensitive about it, so don't be mean to her. We eventually fight green and orange at the end of this part, and it's also a very fun fight where you have to, like, eat all the food. Like, green will toss food in the air and you have to get it before it lands at the bottom, because then orange will get it, and if orange gets 5 food, then they attack you with a very, very strong attack, and it's kind of hard to dodge. So the actual important things on both sides are the scenes between Ralsei and Flowery, where Flowery really presses Ralsei. And this is very interesting dialogue. I'm so glad these were included. So, on the left side, because that's where I started, you have to follow my view, remember. Ralsei mentions how the dark fountains are bad and will bring the roaring, and how we gotta seal this dark fountain. And Flowery jumps on this opportunity and asks such a great question for this moment. So, if the dark fountains are bad, would the person creating the dark fountains, would they be considered bad as well? And of course, Ralsei doesn't know how to respond to this, because Chris has obviously been making dark fountains, but Ralsei likes Chris and trusts Chris. So, it's very, very interesting scene. And then, but after this, we proceed to the right, and we get to a hot spring where Ralsei does talk to Chris about this. Well, you can get him to talk to Chris, it's like an optional dialogue choice. But Ralsei very lightly talks to Chris and is like, don't create dark fountains, it's not good, Chris, but I do trust you at the end of the day, so I'm sure even if I can't understand what's happening, I trust the good ending is with you, Chris. So Ralsei definitely knows that Chris has been creating the dark fountains, but I'm hesitant to say, does Ralsei know that the Knight and Chris are working together? Because he might just think that Chris is doing this on their own accord. I say this because Ralsei seems to really despise and fear the Knight, so I think he would at least say something to Chris about the Knight, even in this dialogue, like hint at it even. Like, I don't like you working with, and then it gets cut off by Susie going back into the scene. So I don't know if he knows that. But moving on to the right side, the sequence with Flowery and Ralsei is different this time, as it's just the two of them with Chris not being there. The dialogue here I find very interesting, as Flowery basically tells Ralsei that he should start doing things on his own accord and put some faith in himself and let himself go a little bit, with Ralsei saying if he let himself go like Flowery, he could burn him down in an instant. And of course, we know now that Ralsei is stronger than he lets on. We also find out later in the chapter that he can use fire magic, but we never unlock it like us to use it, but maybe in future chapters we will. And also Flowery mentions how Ralsei doesn't actually really fully want to win and seal the Dark Fountain, because it's mentioned how Ralsei kind of wants to lose so that they can defy fate in some way, because obviously the prophecy is still the looming threat of the whole game, and we don't want the final thing to happen. So if Flowery does win, then that would defy the prophecy, and Ralsei would be a little happy. So there's a lot of interesting things going on here. So many great characterization, especially of Ralsei, and I just like how Flowery is really saying these issues and really getting this stuff out. But after the dastardly left and right side, we can finally progress to the upper castle, and we can go up and we see a montage of Asgore just neglecting all the flowers in the dark world because he's so absorbed in the research. It's sad to watch a little bit. We meet up with the flowers one last time, who are basically see us as friendly rivals at this point. Well, we don't see them one last time. We get to talk to them one last time, as they just fight us from here on out. As friendly rivals, because like we respect each other now, I guess. But progressing through this area, we get an extremely interesting Flowery interaction again, basically with Ralsei mentioning how Flowery should stop pretending to be a human and be a flower, as that is Flowery's purpose. However, Flowery makes a comment hinting that Ralsei is obviously a hypocrite in this, as he is a Darkner in the form of a monster, which even further on top of that is trying to look like a member of Chris's family. I want to point out that Ralsei might be something more than just like a regular object in the light world. Obviously we knew he wasn't like ordinary for a Darkner, right? But it is mentioned in the chapter that Flowery knows things that Ralsei also knows, such as the menus, and yes, I mean the literal UI menus of the game. Apparently, everything in this game is meta, I guess. But Flowery knows this because he's a flower, which is neither Lightner or Darkner. I'm guessing a Lightner needs to have a soul, like a monster soul or a human soul. So, but he's also not a Darkner because he's not an object, because flowers are living beings. So this gives him the ability to take on a human appearance. So it seems that Darkners couldn't take on the appearance of a human if they even tried to, which is very interesting. But I would go even further than that to say that they can't take the appearance of a monster either, which is what Ralsei is doing. So, because later on it is mentioned that how Ralsei looks like a monster. This is mentioned by Asgore at the very end of the chapter. How Ralsei looks like a monster, but you can tell that he isn't a monster. He's not fully a monster. So I wonder if whatever Ralsei is in the light world is something that is alive but also lacks a soul. That is very interesting to me, and I can't wait to find out what Ralsei is. That'll be a big thing to find out later on. But moving forwards through the chapter, well, kind of not, because guess what time it is? It's time to go to the secret boss. In the next room at the top, you can go to the left of this room is a somewhat hard platforming section, but about halfway through this hard platforming room, you will see this flower coin, this gold flowery coin that is close to the void, and you have to grab it and jump down. And then you will find a wind thing that you have to hit with Susie's Buster, and then you just fall, and then you come across a pink door where you use the mysterious key you got from the shop earlier. Entering, we come across Orange, who says she's going to tell on us to her big sister because we bullied her again. We do a lot of bullying in this chapter. And the big sister is who other than Mew Mew. However, in Deltarune, the character is just called Pink, so I will refer to her as such. Pink is actually possessed by the angry neighbor ghost in the dark world, and you have to fight the angry neighbor ghost and Mew Mew, because Yeah, okay. She gets mad at us for realizing that she's not a flower, because she's like pretending to be one of the 7 flowers, but obviously there's no pink flower, right? So this fight is really good. It's a really fun secret boss, and the soul mode we use is actually the purple soul, which I was not expecting. And the purple soul doesn't really get a new gimmick, to be honest, as there are just some new attacks that are just like play with the perspective, and I'm not gonna lie, it really gave me a headache. This was actually it kind of made me a little motion sick, I guess. It like was really hurting to look at the one where you go forward in the perspective. But the fight is really fun, and you have like dating sequences in the fight. Like it's a really weird fight, which is funny. But this leads into the theme of this chapter that I'm now going to talk about. Okay, look. I'm sorry in advance. Okay, this part will be kind of cheesy. Okay, but the main theme that I think personally, in my opinion, of this chapter is the beautiful power of love. Now, there are obvious things in this chapter, such as Susie and Noelle during the festival. Obviously, they're dating, right? They're in love, right? And the constant reminder of Noelle in the Dark World. Noelle does actually keep being brought up with Susie and with the flowers. Like, the flowers are giving Susie advice in her relationship and wanting to help Susie get with Noelle. However, there are many other ideas of this being shown through, for example, even like Flowery, who everyone has a crush on. And no, I don't just mean in the game. Everyone has a crush on Flowery. But also, you can flirt on the Floridan enemies, in which Chris gets confronted about what they would do if they like someone, even like earlier on in the chapter. I forget the specific dialogue. It's not like, don't worry, it's not a big thing, but it's just like a little thing. We also have the character of Blue, like the flower, who talks about love constantly and is also in a relationship with the yellow flower, Yellow. Furthermore, the main reason these flowers care for Asgore so much is because he has shown them love over the years by keeping them alive, even though they were only supposed to be alive for like one day just for the engagement with Toriel. And that they want to show the love back to Asgore because they know he lacks love in the light world. That is what Asgore lacks, and the flowers want to show that to him. However, no character shows love like the secret boss Pink. So, to start off, Pink's whole boss fight is about flirting with her and getting that Noki meter up, and then eventually going into a literal dating simulator where you have to choose the right options. This fight is kind of crazy, I can't lie. Like, just the music even and everything as well, and I mean, crazy in a funny good way. Like, it's good crazy, of course. It's Deltarune crazy, right? Pink's character is actually 2 characters. The Lightner being the angry ghost possessing the doll, and the doll itself, which becomes a Darkner mid-fight for some reason. Now, the Mew Mew character in the first place is just all about love, like, the character constantly mentioning love and just loving everyone. That's just like the Mew Mew character, I guess. But the ghost has to split from this eventually because the two of them don't agree about love. But the real message of this fight, this boss fight, was actually about loving yourself as a person. Yeah, very similar to how the character was in Undertale, the ghost wanted to find a body that fit it, and finally did with the doll, and wants to be it, like be the Mew Mew doll, as it's fitting for them, right? They love the body. But in Deltarune, there is no life-size Mew Mew doll for the ghost to possess, but the ghost and the doll have to come to terms together to become one thing. There's no life-size doll in the real world, so Mew Mew presumably is coming to our castle town if you did the secret boss. This is the first secret boss to come to castle town, I guess. But they come together and accept one another and finally turn into one being again at the end of the fight, as the ghost was really just scared to lose the body that they loved so dearly. I can go further in on this theme of love, but I'm sure you get it by now. I really think the main theme of this chapter is love, just in general. Love is in the air. But let's move away from the theme from now and get back on track. For beating Pink, we get actually very, very good rewards. So I do not have footage of this. You just gotta trust me that I beat Pink. I promise you I did. I promise. But you get 6 item choices, and you get to pick 3 of these items. This is where you use the remaining 9 pink coins, and most of these items are pretty good, so take the ones you like. But if you get 3 items, you actually get a 4th item as well. The best scarf for Ralsei. The one and only Flowery Scarf. Now I'm actually joking. This scarf sucks ass. It's actually useless. It turns to like an old scarf after you beat Flowery. Like it's like Flowery where it has fake stats, I guess. But I wasn't joking about the other 3 items you can get. They're very strong items, and they're reference to like Undertale items. So get those pink coins. But from here, let's get back to the end of this chapter and the final fight, Flowery. So, on our way up to confront him, the final confrontation begins, where Flowery confronts us and asks if we really are heroes. After all, we are sealing their dream and their world because it will stop the roaring, yet we keep Castletown up and running. I really love this confrontation as like, why are we sealing their fountain and not Castletown instead? Like he isn't entirely in the wrong, but we do have to seal his dark world, obviously. But like he has a point. Like he does have a point there. So we must fight him. And this is where we finally get the Orange Soul, which guess who guessed correctly about the gimmick? Yep, it's a dash. I know. Hold your applause. Thank you. I also want to say, I did kind of guess the Green Soul one. I made an off comment in the Soul gimmick video where I said it might have 8 directions. This was before Chapter 4, by the way, that video. So I'm just saying, I'm like 2 for 3-ish because I couldn't have guessed the Purple Soul, I guess. But I really like the attack patterns in this fight. That's enough about me. Sorry about those things I said. But it's a good fight. It's a really good fight. It's got a great battle theme. I was actually listening to this while I was writing the script. It's a very standout track in this chapter. One of the most standout ones. I really love it. So yeah, it's a great boss fight. Seriously. But alas, we beat Flowery in an honestly difficult fight as well. And of course, we end off with none other than Susie's idea, where we climb up the top on like the bean flower pole thing and take on Flowery in one last assault. Now both you and Flowery are knocked down because you guys are both tired, and Asgore finally takes notice that we are here again in the Dark World, and we get the conclusion to this chapter. Asgore finally comes to his senses and reveals that he got so absorbed in his work to prove he was right that he lost his family life and neglected his children and his wife. He seemingly lost his job with whatever presumably happened with December in the past. So he lost his job first, and then he seemed to lose Toriel and his family after that, not because of what happened to December, because it stated that he wasn't blamed by his family, but just because he wanted to prove himself right so badly he became absorbed with trying to prove the Dark World that it pushed the family away. And Asgore finally learned that maybe he should focus on his family again and the relationships he has. So Asgore in this chapter hasn't fully gone through his arc, but hopefully we will see in the next chapter that he's starting to like get back together and start being a better person, you know. And with that, Asgore compliments us, and we go to seal the fountain. So it's all over. We seal the fountain, and we don't go back to the light world because someone had just created another fountain. And bam! The knight shows up, stealing Asgore. Flowery tries to stop the knight, but his fake stats do absolutely nothing to the knight, and the knight straight up just cuts him in half. Like, that's absolutely crazy, okay? And then the knight leaves with Asgore. Now we get to talk to Flowery dying one last time, and we see Ralsei finally coming around to liking him a little bit. But he still calls him an idiot at the end. But for real this time, we seal the fountain and head back to the light world. So, back in the light world, Susie leaves to go tape up Flowery out of the room, and in his soil, we find 2 things of note. A packet of seeds, which I have no idea if this will come back up. They're like a special packet of seeds. I don't know if we'll bring this to Castletown and they'll do something. But the other thing we get is one of the shelter codes, who Chris is about to rip up, but Susie stops us, saying that Flowery told her to find the code in the soil, and we actually get to keep the part of the shelter code with Susie taking it from Chris before Chris can rip it. Susie doesn't know Chris is about to rip it, by the way. Chris is just about to, but then stops when Susie re-enters the room. The code has numbers written on it. I don't know exactly what they mean. Maybe that's something to theorize about in the future. I assume this is the police symbol part of the code. If you don't remember, the shelter is split up into a pine tree, a police, and the Deltarune symbol. But after this, we get the chance to walk Susie home. It's revealed that her home, at least recently, is the castle town. Now, I assume she has only been staying here since after Chapter 2, since that's the chapter that Ralsei makes the rooms in for Chris and Susie. So I guess Susie might just be staying there after Chapter 2, or like, I guess it would have to be after Chapter... Would it just have to be after Chapter 4? Because Susie stays at our house after Chapter 3, right? So, yeah, just after Chapter 4. She's only stayed there one night, so I guess she's just stopped going home. And we get to see a really cute scene of Susie, with the help of the other Darkers, building Castletown because it's revealed that Susie wants to get Noelle involved in the Dark Worlds for real this time. And she's setting up the Castletown to greet Noelle for Chapter 6. I don't know what will happen party-wise next chapter, but we will see. We will see. We will have to see. Because there are so many things that can happen with Noelle as a permanent party member, becoming a prominent part of the Lancer fan club. And that's the end of the regular route. Okay. Let's talk about the weird route quickly. So, I will summarize what happens in the weird route, okay? In honesty, I haven't played the weird route yet. I might eventually. But it just fucking terrifies me, man, okay? It's genuinely horrifying. Like, this is worse than No Mercy in Undertale by so much. This route is terrifying, especially this chapter. It's the worst this chapter. It's unnerving as hell, but let's talk about it. So, it begins with Chris not wanting to get up from bed, desperately trying to not let us control them and start the day. As it turns out, Chris had slept through almost the entire festival. You can now go outside, and Susie will be raiding, and we go to the aftermath of the festival with her, and we just walk around seeing things. Okay, a quick side note here. I forgot to mention this earlier. In both the regular route and the weird route, we gave Sans a punch card with a drawing, with Susie's drawings of Ralsei, Noelle, Chris, and Susie, but in the weird route, Noelle is left off of the card, making 3. So, a lot of people think that this is the Don't Forget from Undertale in Sans' lab, which it could be. I'm not 100% certain that it is, because why would this only happen in the weird route? Why would that one lead to Undertale Sans? Just because of what is about to happen in the weird route. Like, just because of what is about to happen. Like, it just doesn't seem like the weird route leads to what happens in Undertale, or like the same Sans, you know what I mean? It would have to be the... I just don't understand. Yeah, by the way, it would have to be the weird route one, because that one has 3 people, the regular route one has 4, and in Undertale it is mentioned that the punch card has 3 people on it, or the drawing has 3 people of it. Okay, let's move on to the awful part. So, we get to the lake where Noelle is, and we talk with her. Now, Noelle talks about how she hasn't felt like she could change anything and has been trapped in her life, but she has seen that Chris has changed recently, so Noelle thinks we can change her as well, so she says, let's do something crazy. So they try to swim to the other side of the lake with us spamming proceed until we maybe drown, but also maybe not. It's kind of unclear what happens, because the game glitches out, and then it says, insert Chapter 7, Side B. Oh yeah, and the chapter just ends, by the way. Nothing else happens afterward. There's no Dark World. It's genuinely creepy. I'm unnerved. Now, I don't know if Chris and Noelle actually drowned, or if they clipped out of the game, or what happened. So I guess the weird route will not continue until Chapter 7, which is very, very interesting. And also, the text for Chapter 7 Side B looks like somebody else's computer monitor, and not like it's not on just ours, it's on like a curved one, like within the world or something. So I can't even begin to say what's going on yet. This requires a whole level of analysis that will be saved for a different time maybe. And with that, I think it's best that let's wrap things up. So, I hope you enjoyed my plot summary of Chapter 5. Let me know if I missed anything, if you wanted me to talk about something, and subscribe if you liked the video, just liked it in general, and want to see my upcoming analysis and other theories about this chapter, as I have a lot of things to say, at least planned for the next couple of weeks. So, without further ado, this is my send-off. Goodbye.